Let me tell you about this one night that still haunts me, even after all these years in the job. I was working as a paramedic on the night shift for a small town's ambulance service. It was around 1 in the morning, and up until then it had been a pretty slow evening. Nothing out of the ordinary, so we just chatted as we drove around town. We got dispatched for an intoxicated person, which wasn't unusual at all. Those calls came pouring in between midnight and 3 like clockwork, especially from the college kids. This one was in a sketchy part of town, the kind known for overdoses, street fights, and all sorts of trouble. So the city police rolled with us as backup. In our line of work, a dispatch like that usually means someone's been reported as deep in the grip of alcohol or drugs, acting all disoriented. We pulled up to the address and announced ourselves loud and clear as we approached the door, shouting that emergency services was here. The officers did the same. The cops went in first, cleared it, and waved us through. Right away, stepping inside, something felt wrong. You develop a kind of sixth sense for threats that gut twist when things are about to go south. But this was different, more unsettling, more sinister. We moved into the living room and there was just this single black couch, plain as could be, with a young woman sitting on it. She claimed she'd been asleep. Really. No tables, no chairs, no TV, no books or dishes scattered around. Nothing that said people actually lived there. It was more like a trap house than a home. From where I stood, I could see into the dining room and part of the kitchen. It was the same story. Just a lone table with no chairs, no wallpaper, utterly empty. We figured the woman on the couch was our patient, but she seemed totally fine when we talked to her. No signs of intoxication. Then her boyfriend came down the stairs and he seemed normal too. Still, something was off. They weren't telling us anything and that sixth sense kicked in again. Why were they so calm? The police asked if they could look around the house, and the couple agreed without much fuss. We hung back until the cops cleared each area before following. We'd made it through the dining room and kitchen and were just about to head upstairs when a crash echoed from behind us in the kitchen. I was bringing up the rear, so I swung my flashlight towards the sound, and in that moment my blood ran cold. Crouched on the floor on all fours was a young man, his skin slick with sweat, eyes wide and darting like a cornered animal. His face twisted into a smile, pale, feral, not quite human. The beam from my light caught the open cabinet above the countertop. About 5 feet up, big enough for someone his size to have squeezed into and hidden. We locked eyes for what felt like forever, though it was probably just seconds. I spotted the glint in his hand, a knife maybe 6 inches long, grip tight. Being the junior on the crew, I was hauling our on-scene bag, about 30 pounds of medication and gear, which I hurled at him with everything I had. The knife caught in the bag's thick fabric, knocking him off balance just enough for me to bolt past and yell for the others. I'm a solid 250 pounds, not built for speed, but in that adrenaline rush I moved like my life depended on it, and it probably did. The cops detained the man quickly after that, and we got him calmed down enough to treat him. As we loaded him up and headed to the hospital, 1 minute he'd be this exhausted, apologetic guy. The next he'd switch like another personality entirely, flashing that huge grin, taunting us about what he had planned for us. He then cackled before slumping back on the stretcher. It chilled my bones. Handing him off to the ER nurses was the biggest relief of my career. I've seen plenty of horrors on the job. People in brutal accidents, lives hanging by a thread. But calls like that one, they stick with you. I was a brand new clinical assistant at the local hospital back in 2007, fresh from my training and thrilled to finally have a job. I worked the night shift, volunteering for every lousy task nobody else wanted, just to earn my way into more hands-on medical work. I was one of the few assistants trusted to be in the intensive care unit. That particular night, it was unusually quiet. We only had a handful of patients, all either heavily sedated or in deep comas. So there wasn't much activity, just the noise of machines and that clinical glow from the heart monitors. A couple of hours in, an elderly man passed away peacefully. We'll call him Mr. Smith. Once his family had said their goodbyes and left, I went in to handle the post-mortem care, gently cleaning him up, dressing him in a fresh gown, bagging the body with care, and wheeling him down to the morgue. It was routine, but something about the empty elevator ride in the dead of night always felt a little off. The rest of the shift seemed calm at first, but as the hours dragged on, we all started noticing this weird vibe hanging over the unit. We'd mention it in passing, how the place felt creepy, like an invisible chill had settled in. For me, it was this nagging sensation that someone was watching, prickling the hairs on my arms and giving me goosebumps. I tried to shake it off, blaming it on the late hour and too much coffee. But it lingered, subtle at first, like a voice you can't quite hear. Then, at around 2:30 in the morning, things got strange. The call lights above the patient room doors suddenly started flashing frantic like a strobe light. It happened out of nowhere, and just as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. No explanation, no lingering flicker, just back to normal. One of the nurses remarked on how creepy those lights had been. We attempted to laugh it off, brushing it aside as some electrical glitch, but the tension was there. Another nurse suggested half-jokingly that it must have been Mr. Smith saying goodbye. The words had barely left her mouth when a single call light broke the silence, its beep echoing through the unit. Most of us jumped, scared, and we all turned around to figure out who could be calling for help. We soon realized that none of our patients could possibly have pressed the button. They were all either comatose or sedated beyond movement. Drawn by instinct, I turned and locked eyes on Mr. Smith's former room, stripped and dark. But there it was, the light blinking steadily above the door, and inside the bedside light glowing faintly as if someone had flipped a switch. One nurse muttered that there was no way this was happening, her voice barely above a whisper, and in that instant the call light shut off, the beep silencing, leaving us in stunned silence. We sat there for a few minutes, braced for whatever might come next. But nothing did, thankfully. The rest of the night dragged on in silence. We would steal glances at that empty room every so often, to see if anything was there. We didn't discuss what had happened, and for the rest of the shift, nobody did anything alone. We paired up for every task, every hallway walk, like kids afraid of the dark. It was horror like no other.